For over 40 years, he was a ghost, a shadow, a whisper in the dark. He crept through windows in the dead of night. He tied couples up with shoelaces and made them listen as he assaulted their partners. He watched from closets, from doorways, from behind bushes. Then he disappeared. Police had a name for him, several. In fact, the Visalia ransacker, the East Area rapist, the original Night Stalker. But to the world, he was a mystery. He left behind over 50 rape victims, at least 13 murder victims, and not a single clue as to who he really was. Until decades later when science did something no detective could. A single strand of DNA and a genealogy website shattered the silence. This is the story of how a killer was finally unmasked. This is the story of how genetic testing caught the Golden State Killer. He began in 1974. At first, his crimes were almost small. Petty break-ins in the quiet town of Visalia, California. Someone had been sneaking into homes, rifling through drawers, stealing women's underwear and small keepsakes, and sometimes just leaving strange messes behind. He was nicknamed the Visalia ransacker. But soon, the break-ins escalated. By 1975, things took a dark turn. A local man, Claude Snelling, caught someone trying to abduct his teenage daughter. He was shot and killed. And just like that, the ransacker vanished. Months later, in Sacramento, 300 miles away, the East Area rapist emerged. And the terror began anew. The attacks followed a pattern. A woman alone at home. A late night. A sudden sound, a creak, a knock, a light flickering on. He always wore a ski mask. He often carried a gun. He spoke through clenched teeth, gritting out threats, hissing orders. He'd bind his victims with shoelaces or ripped towels. Sometimes he used dishes, placing them on the back of a male victim and saying, "If I hear these rattle, I'll kill her." He would then assault the woman, sometimes for hours. Sometimes he lingered afterward, eating food from the fridge, drinking beer, just watching. The fear spread like wildfire. Neighborhood watch programs exploded. Gun sales soared. People locked their windows, bought dogs, and slept with lights on. He struck over 50 times between 1976 and 1979. And then silence. But the silence didn't mean he was done. In 1979, hundreds of miles south in Southern California, a new predator emerged. He was more violent now, more lethal. Couples were targeted. Both were bound, and the man was often beaten or murdered. The woman was assaulted, and then the killer vanished into the night, leaving no fingerprints, no fibers, no witnesses. They called this monster the original Night Stalker. And for years, no one realized it was the same man. It wasn't until the early 2000s, when advances in forensic DNA linked the East Area rapist with the original Night Stalker, that authorities understood. This was one man, one predator, operating across the state for more than a decade under different names. The FBI called him the Golden State Killer, but they still didn't know who he was. His crime stopped in 1986, after the brutal murder of 18-year-old Janelle Cruz. Then nothing. He went dark, disappeared. Investigators poured over thousands of tips. DNA profiles were tested. Suspects interrogated. But each lead went nowhere. In the early 2010s, retired Detective Paul Holes took on the case with new urgency. He was obsessed, methodical, even haunted. And he had one idea that hadn't yet been tried. If they couldn't find the killer directly, maybe his relatives could lead them to him. Enter genetic genealogy. Using DNA from preserved rape kit, Holes partnered with a genetic genealogist named Barbara Ray Venner. They uploaded the unknown killer's DNA profile to a public ancestry website, GeneMatch, where people submit their DNA to find distant relatives. And there it was. Not a direct match, but distant cousins. Fourth cousins. Third cousins. A few strands in the killer's family tree. From there, the team built massive family trees. Dozens of branches. Hundreds of names. They combed through birth records, census data, obituaries, marriage licenses. Narrowing the list, they cross-checked locations, birth years, physical traits. And then they found him. Joseph James D'Angelo, born in 1945. a former police officer, lived in areas where the rapes and murders occurred. Married, divorced, 3 daughters, quiet, kept to himself. He seemed ordinary, but Holes had a feeling, a chill in his spine. They trailed him, waited for him to discard something. In April 2018, they collected a tissue from his trash. The DNA was tested and it matched perfectly. After more than 40 years, the Golden State Killer had a name, a face, an address. He was arrested on April 24th, 2018, at his home in Citrus Heights, California. The world was stunned. A 72-year-old man with thinning gray hair, living in a modest neighborhood, turned out to be one of the most prolific serial offenders in American history. But for the victims, it was bittersweet. Many of them had grown old, lived with trauma, or never saw justice. Some had died, never knowing his name. Others had built entire lives in shadow of fear, never forgetting that face behind the ski mask. And now, he sat quietly in court, frail, silent. Joseph DeAngelo was charged with 13 counts of murder and multiple counts of rape and kidnapping. The court process was long, delayed by COVID-19, but in 2020, he struck a plea deal admitting to 13 murders and dozens of rapes and attacks. He received life in prison without the possibility of parole. He offered no apology, no emotion. At the sentencing, victims stood one by one and faced him. They recounted the night terrors, the broken marriages, the lives he shattered. One said, "You are a human predator, a monster, and now you'll rot in a cage." And DeAngelo just sat there, still, cold, like a man who never cared. But this story isn't just about him. It's about the power of science, about the resilience of victims, and the determination of those who refuse to let the case go cold. Genetic genealogy has since solved dozens of cold cases, bringing answers where there were only shadows. It's not just about DNA. It's about truth, justice, memory. For decades, DeAngelo thought he got away with it, but his DNA told a different story. The past had never forgotten him, and the truth, no matter how long it took, refused to stay buried. So, what do we learn from this? That monsters don't always look like monsters. That evil can sit in suburbia. That silence doesn't mean safety. But also, that every crime leaves a trace. That one strand of DNA can whisper the name of a killer, and that even ghosts can bleed. Let us know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Whispers of Crime, where justice is patient, truth is relentless, and stories never stay silent forever.